Dr. Tarek Cherkaoui, the manager of the TRT World Research Centre, joins me now in the studio to speak further about the Arab Spring and its legacy. I want to start with a positive question, if I can, a more hopeful one. Tell us what you think have been the positive outcomes of the Arab Spring protests 10 years ago, those that might actually provide some inspiration for the protesters we're seeing today in Lebanon, Iraq, and Sudan.
I believe that there are definitely a lot of positives. One of them being clear success stories, such as Tunisia. Tunisia has been a model for democratization. It has been a model for moving forward for the people. It has now elected its president, and they have now a parliament that is in very good shape. So these are signs, but there are also less known stories. For example, Oman and Morocco, where the governments there initiated, after the 2011 protest, they initiated a lot of momentum and political momentum in which they created new constitutions and liaised with the civil society and created a new momentum. So these are some of the success stories, less known than, unfortunately, the more gloomy pictures that we see in the news. But also I can say that before 2011, the political situation in the Middle East, and most particularly in the Arab world, was like a desert. It was barren, it was oppressive, it was repetitive, and people were suffocating. They were suffocating politically, economically, socially. So I don't think the Arab Spring was avoidable. I think it was something that was clearly meant to happen, because all indicators, all facts, all figures indicated that the region was suffering. And then, of course, with all this youth, disempowerment, all the unemployment that exists in the Arab world, this was meant to happen.
Okay. It's interesting, those less talked about stories you mentioned, including Morocco. It seemed that leaders there were a little bit wiser in taking preemptive action when they could see the writing on the wall and thought, hey, let's nip this in the bud before the revolution kicks off here, and gets out of control in the way it did in certain countries, whereby the disappointing outcome was that bad situations arguably got worse. You can cite Egypt, perhaps, as an example. They just traded one authoritarian for another, basically. So when you look at the uprising now in Lebanon, how hopeful are you that that won't happen there, that Lebanon might end up with what Tunisia has gotten?
Yeah. Well, I'm very hopeful that the situation will get better because of many reasons. So the first wave, if we can say, or if we can label them as such, the first wave of the Arab Spring, people were not used to the kind of freedom. So there were a lot of actions that were very questionable. There were a lot of slogans that were not achievable, not realistic. But people learned from each other. This is one of the positive outcomes, again, from the first wave of the Arab Spring, that people are learning from each other. What we are seeing in Lebanon today is like people they want to move beyond the sectarian divides. This is a very positive, because that was a narrative that was imposed by the warlords that are actually governing in Lebanon after the civil war that took place since the 70s to the early 90s. So people are transcending this beyond ethnicities, beyond religions, beyond the sectarian divides. This is a very positive outcome. I think the people grew more intelligent, they developed also some awareness, some political awareness that didn't exist before, and people are learning from each other. This is one of the major outcomes. So I'm positive about Lebanon.
Good. Okay.
Cautiously so.
Okay. Tarek, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.